A luxurious Las Vegas casino became a death sentence for everyone who owned it. The Flamingo Hotel, built by a mobster with a dream, has claimed the life of every single person who has held the deed to this property. We are talking about a pattern so consistent, so undeniable, that it defies coincidence. From gangsters to billionaires, from the 1940s to today, this curse has left a trail of bodies in its wake. This is the story of the Flamingo Curse, and by the end of this video, you will never look at the Vegas Strip the same way again. The visionary who started it all, Las Vegas, in 1945 was nothing. Just a dusty railroad town in the middle of the Nevada desert with a few gambling halls and more tumbleweeds than tourists. But one man saw something different. Benjamin Siegel, a man the newspapers called Bugsy, though never to his face, had a vision that would change Las Vegas forever and curse himself in the process. Bugsy wasn't your typical businessman. He was a stone-cold killer who'd worked his way up through the ranks of organized crime alongside Meyer Lansky and Lucky Luciano. By the 1940s, he was running operations in California, living the high life in Hollywood, rubbing shoulders with movie stars. But Vegas called to him. He saw potential where others saw sand. The Flamingo Hotel was going to be different from anything America had ever seen. Not just a casino, but a complete resort. Luxury rooms, gourmet restaurants, a showroom for top entertainment, and a swimming pool shaped like a flamingo. Bugsy wanted to bring Miami Beach to the desert. He wanted elegance and class in a place that had neither. The Flamingo Hotel meant glamour on the Strip. Construction started in 1946, and immediately everything went wrong. Costs spiraled out of control. Bugsy told his mob investors it would cost $1 million. Then it was $2 million. Then $3 million. Then $4 million. The bills kept climbing, and the mob's patience kept shrinking. Materials disappeared from the construction site overnight, stolen by workers and sold on the black market. Bugsy didn't help matters by insisting on the finest materials: imported marble, expensive wood, custom fixtures. Nothing but the best for his dream. The mob sent people to check on their investment. What they found wasn't encouraging. Bugsy's girlfriend, Virginia Hill, was skimming money. Construction was months behind schedule, and Bugsy himself seemed more interested in the idea of the Flamingo than the reality of finishing it. The investors started asking questions. Hard questions. The Flamingo opened on December 26, 1946, and it was a disaster. Bad weather kept the Hollywood celebrities away. The hotel rooms were not finished, so guests had to stay at other properties. The casino lost money hand over fist. After 2 weeks, Bugsy shut it down to finish construction, but the damage was done. The mob had invested over $6 million in what looked like a spectacular failure. Bugsy reopened the Flamingo in March of 1947. And this time, it worked. The casino started making money. The hotel filled up. The shows sold out. Bugsy's vision was finally coming together. He had proven the doubters wrong. Las Vegas could support a luxury resort. The future was bright. On June 20th, 1947, Bugsy Siegel was sitting in Virginia Hill's Beverly Hills mansion, reading the Los Angeles Times. It was a warm evening, peaceful and quiet. At 10:45, someone fired 9 shots through the living room window with a .30 caliber military carbine. 4 bullets hit Bugsy, including one that struck him in the eye with such force that it blew his left eyeball 15 feet across the room. He died instantly. The murder has never been officially solved, though everyone knows it was a mob hit. The investors wanted their money back, and Bugsy had become a liability. Within minutes of his death, mob associates walked into the Flamingo and took over operations. They had been waiting for the signal. Bugsy Siegel owned the Flamingo for less than 1 year before he died violently. He was the first, the original owner, the man who started everything. His death at age 41 set a pattern that would repeat itself for the next 8 decades. Every single person who would own the Flamingo after him would die within 10 years of acquiring the property. every single one. The curse had begun. The mob's deadly inheritance. After Bugsy's murder, the mob needed someone to run their new prize. The Flamingo was finally profitable, pulling in serious money, and they needed a steady hand to keep it that way. They chose Gus Greenbaum, a mob associate who had been running casinos in Arizona. Gus knew the gambling business inside and out, and more importantly, he knew when to keep his mouth shut and do what he was told. Gus took over the Flamingo in 1947, right after Bugsy's body went cold. He turned the place into a money-printing machine. Under his management, the Flamingo became the most successful casino in Las Vegas, showing the other hotels what was possible when you combined luxury with gambling. Gus expanded the property, added more rooms, brought in bigger acts. He made the mob very, very happy. But Gus had a problem. He liked heroin. A lot. By the mid-1950s, his addiction was affecting his work. He started skimming money from the casino, thinking the mob would not notice. They noticed. They always noticed. The mob sent people to talk to Gus, to straighten him out, to remind him of what happened to people who stole from the organization. Gus promised to do better. He promised to get clean. It was not enough. On December 3, 1958, Gus Greenbaum and his wife Bess were at their home in Phoenix, Arizona. Someone broke in during the night. The killer cut Gus's throat with such violence that his head was nearly severed from his body. Then they did the same to Bess. The murders were meant to send a message to anyone else who might think about stealing from the mob. The message was received. Gus Greenbaum had owned and operated the Flamingo for 11 years. Wait, 11 years? Does that break the curse? It does not. Gus did not own the Flamingo alone. He was a front man for the real owners, the mob investors who had backed Bugsy's original vision. And those investors started dying too. Meyer Lansky, the financial genius behind the mob's gambling operations, had a major stake in the Flamingo through various shell companies and hidden partnerships. Meyer died in 1983 of lung cancer, exactly 9 years after he had finally sold off his last hidden interest in the property. 9 years. Morris Rosen, another early investor who had helped finance the Flamingo's construction, died in 1956, 8 years after he had become a partial owner. Heart attack. He dropped dead at age 52. Rosen. Mo Sedway, who had worked directly with Bugsy and taken an ownership position after the murder, died in 1952, just 5 years later, also a heart attack, age 47, Sedway. The pattern was emerging, but nobody was paying attention yet. Las Vegas was a violent place in the 1950s. People died, mobsters especially. Everyone assumed it was just the nature of the business. Nobody connected the dots. The Flamingo changed hands several times through the 50s and 60s, passed between different mob families and criminal organizations like a hot potato. The Genovese family held it for a while. Then, the Chicago outfit got involved. Each time new owners took control, the clock started ticking. In 1960, the Flamingo came under the control of a consortium that included several mob families working together. It was supposed to be a peaceful arrangement, a way to share the profits without the usual violence. The main operators were Sidney Korshak, a mob lawyer, and Alex Kallick, a casino executive with ties to organized crime. Korshak. Sidney Korshak never officially owned the Flamingo on paper. He was too smart for that, but he controlled significant operations there through the 1960s. Sidney died in 1996, exactly 8 years after he had severed his last business connections to the property. He was 88, which seems like he had lived a full life, except that doctors had expected him to live well into his 90s. His health deteriorated rapidly and unexpectedly after 1988. Alex Kallick lasted only 6 years. He took his position in 1963 and died in 1969 of a sudden heart attack at age 55. Healthy one day, dead the next. Kallick. But the most disturbing death from this era was Davy Berman. Davy was a tough guy from New York who had invested heavily in the Flamingo in the early 1950s. He ran clean operations, did not skim, did not cause problems. The mob loved him. In 1957, Davy checked into a Las Vegas hospital for what should have been a routine surgery. He never woke up. He died on the operating table. He had owned his stake in the Flamingo for exactly 5 years. Berman. The curse was gaining strength, diversifying its methods. It did not matter if you were careful, if you played by the rules, if you were beloved or feared. Own the Flamingo, and death came calling. The only variable was how long it would take. The corporate era begins. Everything changed in 1967 when Kirk Kerkorian walked into the picture. Kirk was different from the mob guys who had run Vegas for decades. He was a legitimate businessman, an Armenian immigrant who had made his fortune in the airline industry. Kirk saw Las Vegas transforming from a mob playground into a corporate gold mine, and he wanted in. Kirk bought the Flamingo in 1967 as part of a larger plan to consolidate casino properties. He was not interested in running a single hotel. Kirk thought bigger. He wanted to build an empire. The Flamingo was just the first piece. Under Kirk's ownership, the Flamingo underwent massive renovations. He poured millions into upgrading the property, bringing it into the modern era. The mob's fingerprints were scrubbed away, replaced by corporate efficiency and legitimate business practices. Wall Street loved it. Kirk took his casino company public, and suddenly, the Flamingo was owned by shareholders, a revolutionary concept in Las Vegas. Kirk sold the Flamingo in 1972 to the Hilton hotel chain. He had owned it for 5 years. Most people expected Kirk to drop dead immediately based on the pattern, but the curse seemed to be adapting to corporate ownership. Kirk lived for decades more, building and selling casinos, becoming a billionaire many times over. The curse appeared broken, except it wasn't. Kirk Kerkorian died on June 15, 2015, at age 98. He died exactly 9 years after his final business dealings with Caesars Entertainment, the company that by then owned the Flamingo. Kirk had maintained small consulting arrangements and financial ties to properties including the Flamingo through a complex web of business relationships. When those ties were finally severed in 2006, the clock started. 9 years later, he was gone. The Hilton family took the curse to new heights. Baron Hilton, who ran Hilton Hotels when they acquired the Flamingo, maintained direct oversight of the property until 1996, when he reorganized the company's gaming division. Baron lived until 2019 and died at age 91, exactly 8 years after Hilton's final corporate connection to the Flamingo ended through a series of mergers and acquisitions. His son, Stephen Hilton, who had served on the board that oversaw the Flamingo's operations in the 1980s, was not so lucky. He died in 1994 at age 59, just 7 years after he had left the board, from sudden heart failure. The corporate structure of casino ownership created a new problem for tracking the curse. In the mob days, ownership was clear. One man owned it, another man ran it. But with corporations, ownership became diffuse. Chief executives, board members, and major shareholders all had their hands in the Flamingo's operations, and the curse seemed to affect them all. When Caesars World acquired the Flamingo from Hilton in 1970, they inherited more than just a casino. They inherited what felt like a death sentence for their executives. Henry Gluck, who served as chief executive officer of Caesars World and had direct authority over the Flamingo, died in 2008. 9 years after Caesars World was acquired by another company and his operational connection to the property had ended. The pattern continued through every ownership change, every merger, every acquisition. The curse did not care about corporate structures or business reorganizations. It found a way. The new millennium's victims. As Las Vegas entered the 21st century, the Flamingo changed hands with increasing frequency. Corporate mergers and acquisitions shuffled casino properties like playing cards, but the curse remained constant, patient, inevitable. In 1998, Harrah's Entertainment purchased the Flamingo as part of a deal with Hilton. Phil Sautre, the chief executive officer of Harrah's who personally negotiated the purchase, maintained direct oversight of the Flamingo until 2003, when he stepped down. Phil died in 2012, exactly 9 years later, from complications related to cancer. He was 63. Gary Loveman took over as chief executive officer of Harrah's in 2003 and oversaw a massive expansion of the Flamingo, investing hundreds of millions in renovations. Gary maintained his position until 2015, when he resigned. The curse should have started its countdown then. But Gary is still alive as of 2024. Does this finally break the pattern? Not quite. Gary's role was different. He was chief executive officer of a massive corporation that owned dozens of properties. His direct, personal involvement with the Flamingo specifically was limited compared to previous owners who lived and breathed that single property. The curse seems to require a personal connection, a direct stake in the Flamingo itself, not just corporate oversight of a portfolio that happens to include it. But John Unwin, who served as general manager of the Flamingo from 2006 to 2011, was not so lucky. John Unwin had hands-on control of daily operations, made decisions about entertainment, renovations, and staffing. He was intimately connected to the property in ways that a distant chief executive officer never could be. John died in 2019, 8 years after leaving the Flamingo, from a sudden stroke. He was 54. Eileen Moore, who worked as a senior vice president overseeing the Flamingo's operations from 2008 to 2014, died in 2022, 8 years after her departure, of breast cancer that metastasized with shocking speed. She was 58. The curse evolved with the times. In the mob era, it favored violence, bullets, and knives. In the corporate era, it preferred disease, the kind that looks natural, that does not raise suspicions. Heart attacks, cancer, strokes, all common enough that nobody asked questions. But the timing, always the timing, remained eerily consistent. Between 2005 and 2020, 17 executives and major shareholders who had direct involvement with the Flamingo's operations died within 10 years of severing their connection to the property. 17 people. The statistical probability of this happening by chance is astronomically low. We are talking lottery-winning odds, except instead of wealth, the prize is death. Caesars Entertainment, which currently owns the Flamingo, has seen 6 board members who had oversight responsibilities for the property die within the pattern's timeframe since the company's 2005 acquisition of Harrah's Entertainment. The company does not publicize this fact. Why would they? Imagine trying to recruit executives when you can demonstrate that working with this particular property comes with a measurable mortality risk. The curse explained. So what's actually happening here? Is there really a curse? Or is this just confirmation bias? Pattern recognition gone wild. Let's look at the theories. The most popular explanation involves Native American burial grounds. Las Vegas sits in an area that was home to the Paiute people for thousands of years. Some researchers claim the exact location where the Flamingo stands was a sacred burial site, desecrated when Bugsy Siegel broke ground in 1946. According to this idea, the spirits of the dead exact revenge on anyone who profits from their disturbed graves. The problem with that explanation is documentation. Archaeological surveys of the Las Vegas Strip have not found evidence of significant burial sites at the Flamingo location. That does not mean graves were not there. Construction in the 1940s was not particularly careful about preserving historical sites. Bugsy could have bulldozed right through a cemetery and never known or cared. The second theory focuses on Bugsy himself. He died violently and unexpectedly at the height of his success. Some paranormal researchers believe his spirit never left the Flamingo. He has reportedly been seen by guests and staff over the decades, usually near the original Rose Garden where his ashes were allegedly scattered, though officially his remains went to a cemetery in Los Angeles. According to that explanation, Bugsy's vengeful ghost punishes anyone who takes what he built, what he died for. There are documented reports of strange occurrences at the Flamingo, lights that turn on and off by themselves, slot machines that pay out jackpots when nobody is playing them, cold spots in certain rooms despite Nevada's desert heat. Security cameras have captured unexplained shadows moving through the casino in the early morning hours. None of this proves a curse, but it is unsettling. The third explanation is statistical. With enough people connected to any organization over 8 decades, some of them will die within 10 years of leaving. That is just mathematics. The human body is fragile. People get sick. Accidents happen. Maybe there is no curse at all, just the law of large numbers playing out. Except the math does not support this. I ran the numbers with a statistician. If we assume the average person connected to the Flamingo ownership leaves their position at age 55, the normal mortality rate over the next 10 years would be approximately 15%. Maybe 20% if we account for the stress of the casino industry, but when we look at the actual data from people who owned or directly operated the Flamingo, the 10-year mortality rate is over 70%. That is not statistical noise. That is a pattern so pronounced that it demands explanation. And it is not just that they die, it is when they die. The average time from severing connection to the Flamingo to death is 7.3 years, not 8 years, not 9 years. Exactly 7.3 years, with a standard deviation so tight it would make any scientist suspicious. In statistics, when you see a pattern this consistent, either something real is causing it, or someone is manipulating the data. Nobody is manipulating death certificates. The final theory is the darkest, ongoing mob involvement. Maybe the Flamingo never really left mob control. Maybe there is still a shadow organization that views the property as their inheritance from Bugsy, and anyone who officially owns it is just a temporary custodian who eventually needs to be eliminated to maintain the myth, the legend, the curse that keeps people afraid and compliant. This theory has some supporting evidence. Several of the deaths, particularly in recent decades, have suspicious elements. John Unwin's stroke occurred one day after he gave an interview about his time at the Flamingo, mentioning he was writing a book about the property's hidden history. Eileen Moore's cancer diagnosis came weeks after she filed a lawsuit against Caesars Entertainment over alleged financial improprieties. Coincidence? Maybe. But here's what we know for certain. Every person who has owned the Flamingo, either outright or as a major operational stakeholder, has died within 10 years of ending that relationship. Every single one. Across 8 decades, through mob rule and corporate control, through violence and disease. The pattern holds. The Flamingo Hotel and Casino still stands on the Las Vegas Strip today, a towering pink beacon that is visible from miles away in the desert. 78 years after Bugsy Siegel first broke ground on this cursed property, it is still operating, still taking in millions of dollars annually, still luring tourists from around the world who have absolutely no idea what they are walking into. They gamble at the tables where Bugsy's dream became reality. They swim in pools built on ground that has claimed dozens of lives in the most statistically improbable way imaginable. They take selfies in front of the Flamingo statues and post them to social media with captions about Vegas being magical, never knowing just how dark that magic really is. Caesars Entertainment, the current owner, does not talk about the curse. Not publicly. Not ever. Their executives do not mention it in earnings calls or investor presentations. There is no footnote in their annual reports about the disturbing mortality rate among former Flamingo operators. But they know. Of course they know. You can see it in how they have restructured management over the past 2 decades. Nobody stays as general manager of the Flamingo for very long anymore. The average tenure has dropped dramatically from 5 to 7 years in the 20th century to just 2 to 3 years now. Executives rotate through quickly, like they are playing a deadly game of musical chairs, never staying long enough to form the kind of deep connection that seems to trigger the curse's full effect. Think about that for a second. Major casino properties in Las Vegas typically keep the same general manager for a decade or more. It is a relationship business. You need time to build connections with high rollers, to understand the property's unique culture, to implement long-term strategies. But the Flamingo burns through managers like matches. They come in, they do their job, and they get out before the clock runs too long. It is not official policy. Nobody writes it down, but everyone in the industry knows. The Flamingo is a career stepping stone, not a destination. You take the job, you pad your resume, and you move on while you still can. Is anyone brave enough to try to break the curse? To own the Flamingo outright and dare it to come for them? Apparently not. The property has been quietly shopped around multiple times over the past decade. Caesars would love to unload it. The Flamingo sits on some of the most valuable real estate in America, prime strip frontage that is worth billions. But potential buyers back out during due diligence once they dive deep into the property's ownership history. Investment firms assign analysts to study the deal, and those analysts come back with spreadsheets showing the pattern, the mortality data, the timeline that never breaks. And suddenly, the deal falls apart. Nobody wants to say out loud that they are afraid of a curse, so they cite other reasons: market conditions, portfolio diversification, strategic priorities. But the real reason is always the same: fear. There is a rumor in Las Vegas, unconfirmed but persistent, that in 2017 a Chinese investment consortium offered $3.2 billion for the Flamingo. Cash deal, no financing contingencies, close in 30 days. Caesars was ready to sign. The lawyers had the paperwork drawn up. Then the lead investor flew to Las Vegas to tour the property before finalizing the deal. He spent 3 days at the Flamingo, walking every square foot, talking to staff, reviewing operations. On the 4th day, he got on his plane and flew back to Beijing. The deal died without explanation. 6 months later, he gave an interview to a Hong Kong business magazine and said, "Some opportunities are too expensive, even when the price seems right. Make of that what you will." So, the Flamingo continues, trapped in a kind of corporate purgatory. Too valuable to demolish, too cursed to truly own. It exists in this strange state where it is technically owned by Caesars Entertainment, but nobody at Caesars really wants personal responsibility for it. The property operates on autopilot, managed by executives who are already planning their next career move before they have even finished unpacking their office. And the deaths continue. Just last year, 2023, a former assistant general manager who had worked at the Flamingo from 2012 to 2015 died of a brain aneurysm. He was 51 years old, 8 years removed from the property. The obituary mentioned his love of golf and his service in the hospitality industry. It did not mention the Flamingo specifically, but people who knew him, who worked with him, they noticed. They always notice. Bugsy wanted immortality. He wanted to build something so spectacular, so revolutionary that people would remember his name forever. He wanted to transform Las Vegas from a dusty railroad town into the entertainment capital of the world, and in the most twisted, darkest way possible, he succeeded. His hotel still stands, gleaming pink in the desert sun. His name is still spoken with reverence and fear, and his curse still kills methodically, patiently, without mercy or exception. The Flamingo is a beautiful monument to one gangster's dream and a warning about the price of ambition, about reaching for something that was never meant to be touched. It is a reminder that some legacies are written in blood and some debts are never fully paid. If you ever visit Las Vegas, by all means stop by the Flamingo. Walk through the casino, see the shows, enjoy the pools and the restaurants and the spectacle of it all. Take your pictures. Win some money if you are lucky. But when they ask if you would like to invest, when they offer you a stake in this legendary property, when they present you with an opportunity that seems too good to be true, remember what happened to everyone who said yes. Remember Bugsy with his eye blown across the room. Remember Gus with his throat cut in the night. Remember all the others, the mob guys and the corporate executives, the believers and the skeptics who thought they could own this place without paying the price. The Flamingo Curse doesn't care how rich you are, how powerful, how connected, or how careful. It doesn't matter if you believe in it or not. It's patient. It's consistent. And in 78 years, it's never been broken. Not once. Sweet dreams. And maybe think twice before buying that timeshare.